Awesome. So Zoom tells me I am now recording, but I'm super excited to talk to you today, Ruth Marie, because this is going to be fun. This is like one of our like interview style webinars. So I'm
Okay.
excited because you're someone I've been wanting to talk to about their Ironman experience for a long time. And so I was really excited when I sent you an email and asked you if you'd be willing to talk to us. And I was even more excited when you said yes. So there we go.
Awesome.
So just for people that are listening later that don't know Ruth Marie, I'm going to give her a little bit of an introduction, but then I want her to kind of do a little intro on herself. But Ruth Marie is basically a fixture in the Huntsville triathlon community. She is currently the president of the Huntsville, what we call ourselves, Team Rocket Triathlon Club. And that's a club that's, depending on the year, about 100 and so to 200 and so members strong, hosting up to, I think it's 7 or 8 races annually. And it's all volunteer and it's all for charity. So that's a big organization to be at the helm of. And then she's also a quite accomplished Ironman triathlete, which we're going to talk about today and hear from her on that. And then also, this is going to be the really cool part. We're going to talk about pencils. So, yes. So sit down and hold on to your seat because it's going to be awesome. So I'm excited. So will you just tell us a little bit about tell me about where are you from? How did you come to Huntsville? What's your whole story?
So I grew up in rural Mississippi on a cotton and soybean farm. Both sides of my family were in farming. I went to Delta State University in the Mississippi Delta with a teaching degree, and I taught school for about 5 years, and then I took a full-time job at the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. And one of the things I did that was really rewarding was it was sending kids from rural communities to space camp. So my background blended very well into that. And I worked at the Rocket Center for about 12 years. And right around the time that I started getting into fitness was right around the time that I started feeling I need to do the other things and have more adventure in my life. And I've worked at the YMCA. I was the camp director at Camp Chalakee. I left there in 2018, and I was on a South American adventure. I was kayaking for 2 weeks and went to Easter Island, and I interviewed for a part-time job at Bicycle Cove. And that led me here. I thought it was going to be a part-time job until I found a full-time job, and I've been here for 4 years now. I have a husband named Chris Key, who I've convinced to do a few triathlons. And then I have 2 little doggies, Ferris and Sassy. So
yes,
yeah.
We love Ferris and Sassy. Ferris is named Ferris Bueller. I think that's so funny. What's the Bueller part? What's the Bueller?
So our previous dog was named Boo. And so Ferris' name was actually after a Mississippi State baseball and Delta State baseball coach, Boo Ferris. But everyone just assumed that it was Ferris Bueller, and so we made it Ferris Bueller.
It's perfect for him. He's just the cutest little thing.
And he loves open water swimming. So
he does. Well,
yeah,
see, that's perfect for your family.
He's a multi-sport. Sassy works at the bike shop, and he likes open water swimming.
Multi-sport family. That's so funny. I've actually done a triathlon in Mississippi. It's in Tradition, Mississippi, which is one of those what's that Jim Carrey movie where everything looks the same? The Truman Show. It looks a lot. The Tradition is one of those planned communities that looks a lot like that. But they've got a beautiful triathlon down there. It's somewhere near the coast. I feel like it's inland a little ways, but so
I've done one which was Memphis in May, which was near Tunica. And then I did the Ironman in Jackson, Mississippi on the reservoir. But those are the only 2 triathlons I've done I did one in college, but I really don't count that one because I was just trying to get intramural points.
Well, how do you grow up in the Mississippi Delta with no accent whatsoever?
My mother beat pronunciation into me. So.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I lived down on the Gulf Coast there for a couple of years. So I love Mississippi. It's one of the, I think, secrets of our nation. A lot of people just kind of skip right over, drive past, don't realize it's really a fascinating place. So
it's cool. A wonderful place with wonderful people. So
Yeah, agree. Everybody I've met from there has been really awesome people. So that's so cool. So Bicycle Cove, like I was telling her in the pre-show, she's got these beautiful bikes in the background, and a lot of people would love to have that be their Zoom background, but now it's actually for reals. Like it's the deal behind you at Bicycle Cove. So is it hard to like sit there every day and see all these amazing bikes come through, or do you just buy every single one that you see?
I love it because I love talking to people about their bikes. Like I said, when I there's two things I like to talk about: triathlon and pencils. But I love to talk about people with their bikes, because everyone has a unique story with their bike, especially if they've been riding for a long time and they've really bonded with it. Like why they picked this drivetrain or that drivetrain, or it's really unique. And also different type of athletes treat their bikes differently, so it gives me a chance to see the diversity of bikes. So
That's right.
I really enjoy it. We get to geeking out and talking about bikes all the time.
Yeah, I bet. That's really neat. And a lot of people name their bikes. Do you have your bike named? What is your bike's name?
I do. My road bike is Rogue One, because I do like to jump off the front from time to time. And then my new triathlon bike, I got the new Speed Concept. It's named Bertha. So
Big Bertha.
yeah.
That's very cool. And you must have gotten them at Bicycle Cove, I imagine.
I did get them at Bicycle Cove. It does benefit to be an employee at a bike shop.
Yes, that's pretty great.
Yeah.
I love that. One of my favorite volunteer jobs ever was volunteering. Everyone should do this. Volunteer at Ironman, where you are the person that takes the bikes from the athletes and helps them get off the bike at Ironman and racks their bikes for them, because you get to do everybody, starting with the pros and the really high level, all the way down to the people that literally are the last one to finish. It's just so exciting because you get to handle all these really cool bikes. And it was something else to be like, okay, this bike costs more than my car. Like I got to be really careful with it. So that's a neat thing to get to handle bikes every day, all day.
Yeah.
I
I did that job one time and it was fascinating because you get to see everybody, whether it's
Yeah.
a pro or the very last of the pack, you get to see everybody in it. It actually makes triathlon look a lot harder than it is. I did an Ironman and then I volunteered for an Ironman, and I was like, I don't know if I would have ever signed up if I would have seen that from that perspective before I signed up.
My favorite comment that came in from people that they hand you their bike and they say, just take it, just throw it away. I don't care. I'll never want to see it again.
I don't want to see it again.
Yeah. So speaking of Ironman, so tell me about like your Ironman journey. Like how did you go from never having done one to all the way to completing? And I'm just gonna take a guess. This is gonna be like one of those like gumballs where you guess how many gumballs. I'm gonna guess how many Ironmans you've done, and I'm gonna say I'm just gonna guess without knowing anything. Don't tell me. I think you've probably done like 7 half Ironmans and maybe 8 Ironmans. Am I close?
You're not close.
How close am I?
So I have done 10 branded and non-branded half Ironman.
Okay.
And I have done 12 full Ironman. So
okay, I wasn't even I was like basically half on both of those guesses.
So the story, I always love telling the story, especially my mother that beat pronunciation to me, that I had gotten out of shape. I had gotten overweight, and my mom sees a photo of me on Facebook and she calls me in a Southern mama, I don't know if it's the dress. I don't know if it's just the lighting, but it kind of looks like you may have put on some weight. And I always tell people that I was inspired to do an Ironman because my mama called me fat. She hates it. She did not use that word, but I knew she was putting my best interest. So that was like the fall of 2011. And then in 2012, I started swimming. Being in a camp background, I knew a little bit about swimming. So I swam. I did my first 5K in Mississippi at my summer camp that I worked at. And I was like, okay, I can swim, I can do a 5K. I just need a bike and I could be one of those triathletes. So I went to all the bike shops in town, and I was so intimidated by just the thought of a bike, all the mechanical side of everything. But, I got a bike at Blevins. I remember talking to Chris and Jessica Levin, and like, because all of those shops were opening at the time, and I get a bike and I start training for my first little sprint triathlon, which was Wet Dog. And it was, I think it was in July of that year. And I was doing lots of other activities, but I liked it. I got bit by the bug, but I wasn't 100%, this is what I want to do. But in 2013, me and a friend of mine, working at Space Camp, we have nicknames. Her name was Amazon. My name's Red Bull, but Amazon and I signed up to do some more triathlons. And in 2014, we both signed up to do Ironman, the inaugural Ironman in Chattanooga. And I did what I just started kind of building up. I do an Olympic, then I did a half, and I just kind of built up to that. And through racing, I enjoyed the travel. I raced in 2014, my first, and I didn't race again until 2016. My friend Amazon had gotten in her head that she was going to qualify for Kona. And I kind of came along as the barn mule. If you're not familiar with that, thoroughbreds, they have an animal that stays with them that kind of keeps them calm. And I would always say that I was the barn mule to Amazon. She finished 7th in her age group 3 times. And then her last race was in 2017, Ironman Florida. She finished 9th female overall, 3rd in her age group. She still didn't get a slot.
9th overall and didn't get a slot. Crazy.
She didn't get a slot. And that's one of the reasons that it's very frustrating. There's not as many women's spots as there are men's spots, because it's all about, appearance. Like it's X number of women perform or compete, so X number of slots. Well, X number of men, which are much larger. So since there's a larger population, there's more. Like her age group in men, there was 5. Her age group in women, there were only 2 slots. And that was the 1st and 2nd female of the race overall. So,
wow.
Yeah, it was,
that's tough.
It was tough. So, but sadly, she had an automobile accident that she nearly lost her foot. And I'd had this dream of, going and cheering on my friend whenever she went to Kona. So I kind of got into this like Kona wanting to go. And so I thought I conceived a plan to get in through the legacy program, which the legacy program, 12 Ironman, and then you just kind of wait your turn and they'll give you a slot at Kona. So that's kind of where it's at. But along the way, I fell in love with it. I do so much. I've helped with kids races. I've coached. I have my coaching certification, but I mainly like to talk and see how I can improve my game from time to time. So
yeah, that's pretty exciting. So you've now finished your 12th one, and
I
so
have
now
finished my 12th.
You're in the mix for the legacy spot.
I am in the mix, but because of COVID and everything, I'll probably be an old lady by the time I get to go there.
You'll be in the 70, 74 age group before. Yep. Well, my motto is always outlive the competition. So you're well on your way.
Yeah.
You're very healthy and the odds are very good. So which ones have you done? Like, can you list them all without forgetting them?
Yeah, I've done Ironman Chattanooga. Now I've done that one 4 times because it's in our backyard. I've done Ironman Florida 4 times as well. And then Texas, Louisville, and Tulsa. I think Texas, Louisville, and Tulsa. Yep, those are. I've done Texas twice, and then Tulsa was my 12th last May. So.
Wow, that's exciting. That is really neat. So you've tackled the same ones a few times. Why did you like to keep going back to? Well, Chattanooga because it's in the backyard, but what about?
It's in the backyard. When going back to Florida, so interesting enough, I should have gotten my 12th in 2020, But we all know what happened in 2020. I was signed up for Santa Rosa and Maryland. Those were the two I was signed up for. And Santa Rosa was in California, and it's earlier in the season. So I actually knew that it wasn't going to happen because it was a California course, and I pulled out of that one, and I deferred to Florida, because I thought if any race is going to happen, it's going to be Ironman Florida. And that was the only race that happened in the United States in 2020. So I was able to keep because you have to race in consecutive years and everything. So I was able to keep my consecutive years going, and race again in 2020 and get that would have been my 11th. And so that was a choice that was just trying to game the system. And then Tulsa was because it was early in 2021. So there's a couple of different reasons why, looking at the schedule and trying to figure out, but yeah, Chattanooga was easy, but I'll never go back to Chattanooga after the last super hot one in 2019. So
yeah, I was just about to ask, what is your strategy for Chattanooga? Like, can there be a strategy for Chattanooga? What have you found to be like the most successful way to tackle that race? Because for those of you listening that aren't from here, if you're listening from here, it is known for being super hot. I mean, it's always super hot, but it's also very hilly. So those are the challenges.
So the first year I did it, it was my first Ironman. It's still my best performance based on time. You have to get out of the swim, even though it's a downstream swim, you still have to get out of the swim fresh. If you're not a good swimmer and you get out and you're still tired, you set up your day badly. The hills are not, I don't think they're terrible. I think they're nice. I always would just grind up, not using too much power, just get up the hills and try and power down the backside, because I was getting free speed. I felt like the bike course was set up really well. I'm kind of a low cadence athlete. And so I thought the bike course was set up really well for me. And then on the run, I remember the first year it was run everything but the aid stations and Barton, and it worked out really well. It was one of my best marathons for a while. And then later on, I just did intervals for Chattanooga. I will say that the first year run course was set up better because they reversed it in the years later. You would actually go out on the greenway and come back on the highway that first year, but they switched it up where you went out on the highway and came back on the greenway and then went over to Barton. So
just more motivating because you're kind of like on the shady parts and being cheered on by people, and who wants to run on a highway?
Yeah, it's really that leaving T2 is really soul sucking. And I think it was 2016, which was I call it the first super hot chatty. I actually got in the swim really early. I probably did not swim in my time slot because I felt like if the cooler it was during the day on the bike, the better off I would be. And so I can remember the first loop, it felt cool. And the second loop, I could feel, the heat coming up off the highway. But other than that, and I thought my performance there was okay. Where it really was soul sucking was the second super hot chatty, which was 2019. I did all of the things that a veteran triathlete should not have done. I did not set up my nutrition right. I had switched nutrition about 6 weeks beforehand, and I didn't read my nutrition. It was 2 scoops per 100 calories as opposed to 1 scoop per 100. And so I had like half the calories on the bike. I think I flushed my system over hydrating, And and then I also didn't have some of the things that I needed in my T1 and T2 bag. So all of the mistakes that day, and it was a miserable day, but I think it was a great day. I tell everyone, if you don't learn from a bad performance, then that's a loss. But if you learn from a bad performance, that's totally a win. And I set myself up to do Ironman Florida later in November, and I had a much better performance. And I didn't die, and I didn't have blisters on my feet.
It's a beautiful course. I love Florida. Just being able to swim and see fish and all of that. That's, to me, that's the coolest part about swimming anyway. So the fact that you get to see through the water in Florida just makes it, to me, my favorite race. What do you think is the most critical, like, supplies? Like you said, it didn't have the things I needed. Like, what things did you need that you didn't feel like you had, or like what do people need to make sure they have in that?
Well, one of the things that I just kind of gotten out of the habit of packing in my T2 bag was a towel. And I know that sounds crazy. You're like, hey, you got to have all your things. That day it was super hot and I was cramping. It was the only time I've ever cramped on the bike. Knock on wood, wherever there's wood. And I would stop and pour water all over me just to cool down and just to like regroup. And then I would pedal along, and I did that probably halfway in between each of the aid stations. I wanted to finish. When I got into the tent, I look around and I'm like, it looked like kind of a war zone, and it was like people were laying out everywhere. And I was like, my feet were sopping wet. And I was like, I need a towel. There was nothing dry in the tent anywhere. My friend Jamie Moore was actually volunteering that day, and she was like, I'll go get something. I was like, no, I just need to get out on the run course. So my feet were actually just wet.
Yes.
And I put my socks on and I tried to run, and it ended up turning into blisters. But then also I should have had some extra nutrition in there too. I should have just like completely regrouped, and I just had the essentials to, jump off my bike, get on and go. But you should always use a T2 as a time to, put extra stuff in it. You get the bag back, it's not like a special needs, but put all the stuff that you would want to put in your special needs bag, just duplicate it in your T2 bag, because it's not as much gear as T1 with all the bike gear.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Just everything you think you might possibly need or might possibly want. That's a good call. And it's funny, on those hot races, I get this kind of feeling like it's like a clammy, hot, cold feeling. Like you're not cold, but you're not hot. You're just you're clammy and you're cold in the head because you've been pouring cold water on your head, but then your body's hot, but then you're cold in the chest because your jersey is wet. It's a very weird feeling that you get, to me, especially when you're in the shade. It's odd.
It's sometimes weird because you'll be running and you feel like you're cold, but your body has just like kind of done a number on itself.
Yeah, with the sweat pattern and everything. It's just a weird thing. One of the things someone told me one time was always to wear a hat where you could put ice underneath it. And to me, that always just made my head feel really cold, but then the rest of me feel extra hot. So I don't know. There might be a magic way to do that. Maybe you put ice in your sports bra. I don't know if
I like to put it like right in the back of my sports bra. That's where I put the ice. And I think it's great because it hits you right there. So it's
they
good.
Gave us one bike ride I did a long time ago. It was out of Washington State, called Ride Around Mount Rainier in One Day. And as you were heading up the big climb, they handed you this big tube sock that was full of ice, and they just slung it around your neck. And at first it felt really hot because it was this big dry sock on your neck. But in like 2 seconds, it started to melt, and you had this cold like sock, and it felt so good. And I've always thought that would be a really nice thing, because they give you those wet towels, but in about a half second, those things dry out. I just thought the ice sock, if someone's listening out there that's a race director, try out the cheap tube sock. I don't know. It seemed like a good fit.
It does sound like
that's a good tip for those hot races. I know a lot of people struggle with those. And like nutrition wise, have you ever figured out the magic how to do the hot races with nutrition? What's your tips there?
Well, I've been told, and I won't tell the athlete that told me this, but because I have a little extra fat on me, I typically do better in hot races. I've seen the science to do so. I'm not saying that yeah, I can handle the heat, but I don't like it. I don't want to go back anymore. As far as nutrition, I feel like trying to get the right type of carbs, because a lot of the sugars in the heat make me like nauseous. Like trying to actually eat a little more real food than taking all the goos. In both of the super hot chatties, there came a point in time that I couldn't take any nutrition in late in the marathon because it was making my stomach. So I would just like eat a cookie at the aid station or an orange slice or something. So that has been, and then I've actually tried to get away from gels. I haven't done an Ironman in over a year, but I know when it came to training I did a marathon in the fall, I tried to stay away from gels. I tried to get more real food.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good tip. I think that's thing a lot of people overlook when it comes to nutrition is just looking at what real foods, because for most of us, we can't really afford to use the engineered foods a lot of the time during training because they're so expensive. If you're using them day in and day out, like you're quote supposed to, they end up just costing a lot. So it seems like it works better to maybe have something that's real food that then you could just replicate that during race day. And if it's a simple food like a sweet potato, you can chunk it into little chunks, or whatever works for you. That seems like a good idea. That's cool. I read one time years and years ago about an ex-football player that ate black bean and egg burritos during the bike ride during Ironman, and that didn't work for me in my mind. That sounded like just barfarama, but I mean, hey, if it works, I think that's what a lot of people do.
I've seen people take an Arby's bag out of their special need and just eat an Arby's burger. So
yeah, one of my athletes really loves those Uncrustables, peanut butter frozen things, and he just likes them because you can stick them in your bag and they're frozen, and then by the time you get to your bike, they're thawed. But anyhow, that's a wild thing to do, is to try to figure out what works best. So how many have you done in 1 year? Have you done more than one in 1 year before?
And I guess it was 2019 I did 3, and
Ooh.
that was a lot. My performances were not super great. I at the end of that year, I didn't really want to race in 2020. And I can remember Dana DeBartoleben saying, just sign up. By the time the year rolls around, you'll be back refreshed. You won't be burnt out. And interesting enough, 2020 was a completely different type of year. And I'm glad I did sign up. But I didn't do the race I signed up for. So sometimes you have to really, I've learned the more I've done it, you do have to engineer your yearly schedule to where there's not a lot of burnout, because your performance isn't going to be as good if you have one race, or even like a spring race or a fall race, and you really kind of build up to that. You both mentally and physically, you're a whole lot better prepared for that than if you just stack your calendar full of 1,000 different races. I know my first year going up to Ironman Chattanooga, I did a lot of little races because I was trying to get experience. But now that I have experience, I try not to race as much. I try to train more than I race. And I think mentally it helps me as well.
That's cool. So when you first did your first one, how many years did it take you to build up to being able to do your first Ironman?
So I guess July of 2012 to September of 2014. So that was probably 20, like a year and a half, probably 26, 27 months from my first to, I guess it'd be 28 months. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
It's like a baby. We have to count it in months.
Yeah. Counted in months. So it was
Triathlon
kind of,
baby.
yeah, it's a
Yeah,
process.
it is. Yeah, it definitely is. And did you go walk through the distances? Were you like, okay, I'm going to do a sprint, I'm going to do an Olympic, I'm going to do a half? How did that work?
So I did exactly that. In 2012, because I was focused a lot more on swimming, I did, my first sprints, and then I swam at a relay, Rocket Man, my first year. And so that's like almost a mile. And then, so the next distance is the half. So I didn't do a half Ironman next. I did Rocket Man in Florida, which was a Olympic plus. It was like a 40-mile bike ride, because you rode around the launch complex at Kennedy Space Center, and then you did the other distances. You did, a 1500 meter swim, and then a 10K at the end.
And that was one of the last ones, wasn't it? They don't do that one anymore.
Yeah, they I think they only did it 2 years. So,
Okay.
and then the later that fall, I did my first full Ironman, and it was in Augusta, Georgia, which, interesting enough, I had signed up for Chattanooga full, I think 1 or 2 weeks before I'd even done half, but it was just because everyone, I don't know if you remember, but everyone was like cramming to get into Ironman Chattanooga, because it was going to be the first in the Southeast, and super close to Huntsville. So I signed up as soon as I got the chance to, which there was some times leading up to the first Ironman that I was like, I've gotten way over my head. And then I did a couple of fulls, and then in 2014 was the first time I did 2 century rides leading up to my first Ironman. But I'd never done a marathon until the marathon after, at the end of Chatty.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, everyone listening should definitely take note, because that is the way that you do it. Take a couple of years, walk through the distances, work on each one at a time, see how you feel, learn from them. I mean, that is awesome. I know, I mean, sure, many people finish Ironmans having done a sprint and signing up and being like, I'm going for it. But, and I'm sure they, do fine, but like, man, that's awesome. That's the way to do it. Just kind of build as you go and everything. And I think it's okay sometimes to do a little Hail Mary, like you said, your first marathon was the Ironman marathon, and that kind of stuff works out. Once you get to a certain endurance ability, you kind of can figure out how it's going to go for you and your training and stuff. But I love that. I love that you methodically, it sounds like you're a methodical person. You methodically worked out, this is how it's going to work, or at least, in general, had kind of a plan of where you wanted to go. So I think that's part of why you've been so successful, because you kind of looked at it like that you're going to build on year to year, and you've got a goal. I mean, it's the rare person who can stick with the sport in this relatively short amount of time, from like 2014 to now, and get in 12 races and just stick with it and be like, I'm after that legacy spot. That's what I'm going to do, and just do it. I think that shows a lot of stick-to-itiveness.
Yeah. That's the one thing I like about triathlon. It is definitely, it is both a physical and an intellectual sport. You do have to think and plan, and there's logistics, and there's getting to places, and making sure you have all your gear, and even controlling race morning. I mean, there's so many different ways to look at Ironman, or any triathlon. It can be a sprint I did a sprint triathlon this weekend, and we roll up to the start, and my buddy didn't bring her helmet. She left it at the hotel. So you have to figure out, how do you race, and get your helmet and various things. So it definitely makes us better at doing all the things in life, so I learned a lot from.
I always say that swimming is such a production. I feel like if you can go to the pool and swim and get all your things and get to work, I mean, that you can do anything. There's so much to it. You got to have your shampoo, and you got to have your whatever, it's just, it's a detailed sport. I know a lot of people, I'm sure in their lives, they're like, look, my work is detailed enough. I don't need a sport that's also that way. But to me, it's kind of a good synergy because it's like, it's similar enough, but it's also an outlet and you get to perform. So that's really cool. And it's led to lots of friendships. I know it sounds like you guys have tons of triathlon friends, and then you of course are now, like we said, have done a great job taking over the helm of Team Rocket Tri Club this year, and being, well, before that, being the race director for a couple of races as well. Weren't you the race director for the Tri for Old Glory and then
Tri for Old Glory? I helped out. I've been with Tri for Old Glory for a while, but I just took over race directing, I guess, in 2020, and we didn't have a race that year, but I've just served in different roles inside Tri for Old Glory, and then finally took over as race director. So
cool. Well, it's a neat race. I love that it's first of all off-road, which I am not brave enough to do because A, I am clumsy. B, I do not own a mountain bike. C, I am clumsy.
Well, I have a knack of whenever I've decided that I want to do something, it encompasses all areas of my life. And when Tri for Old Glory, I think it was 2013 was the first year, and I was manager of Aviation Challenge, which is home to Tri for Old Glory, and I had this idea that we could do a triathlon there. Wouldn't it be great? And then people were like, well, we can't bike. We're so close to 565, blah, 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 blah. And I can remember Rick Greif and somebody else coming down to Aviation Challenge, and they're like, why don't we do a mountain bike? That would be great. And I was like, okay, however I can help, let's do it. And so TRTC worked with the Space and Rocket Center, and I was just like, okay, this is great. I'm learning about triathlon, and now there's a triathlon where I work. So
oh, I did not know that. So you're like the mother of Tri for Old Glory.
Well, I'm not the mother of it. I just was like, I was curious. That is the big thing. I'm super curious about stuff, and I do like it to take all aspects of my life. When I decide to be obsessive about something, I'm truly obsessive about it.
That's awesome. And we will come back to the obsession because I definitely want to talk about the pencils.
Okay.
And so, now you're the president of the club, and you've got all these races going on. How do you kind of like balance all of that with your job? Like, how do you do it? You're sort of, how do you do it?
I've been asking myself that question. Like this morning, I was sending some emails about a race, and so I have to do my morning workouts, and then sometimes I have to work on specific things when it comes to the Tri Club. And I don't really know if I'm doing a good enough job right now, because it is a lot of things are going on with the club right now, a lot of transition, and we've got 2 new race directors, and trying to be there for them. And it's really just I have to map out every single week, because I really did have to carve out 5 minutes for some emailing this morning, and then, okay, Sassy, let's go to the bike shop.
Let's do it.
So yeah,
let's do it. Cool. So like sort of blocking out your time and figuring out when you're going to work on different things. Yeah, that sounds familiar.
It looks like I haven't, unfortunately, I haven't trained that much this week, but I've done a lot of other stuff, so I felt like I've been productive. So yeah, but it is, you gotta have to take it like it's training. This is going to be my TRTC block. This is going to be my block to do this. So yeah.
Somebody said to me one time kind of about planning, it's that you want to set up your day like a game you can win, where you feel successful, each of the things that you have laid out for yourself. You're not packing so many things in that you don't feel like you can do them all, but you're also giving yourself these little tasks that at the end of the day, you can cross them off and be like, rock star. So that's cool. Yeah, because you certainly have a lot going on with that. I mean, I know from the presidential side, it seems for most people probably think, oh, she's the president. There's a lot of high level stuff that goes on doing president. Like you got to kind of keep up with just the general running of the board and keeping everybody going on races and helping them. But there's also some of the like, you got to do all the work stuff too. Sometimes if someone's not there to do it, you guys get stuck, I'm sure, packing up chairs or doing whatever. It's a big job. So, I mean, I know a lot of the athletes that hopefully will listen to this, that'll be part of Team Rocket, don't realize, like, it's a big job to be on the club board, and it's a big job to be the president. So it takes all the members of the club to be able to chip in and take that burden, so that, we're getting to have races, because we do have amazing races, but it takes a lot of people to put it on. So supporting Ruth Marie and everything she's doing that's really important as a club member. So
I think that's one of the things that drew me to, Team Rocket drew me more to the sport than just if I were an independent triathlete trying to do races. I remember going to my first open water swim, and, I only knew one or two people. It was down at Lake Gunnersville, and, we swam, and I probably didn't, swim a great deal because I was new to the sport. But everyone like starts pulling out their coolers and opening them up and sharing. And, there was like beer there, and I was like, oh, I have found my people. And it was, I had my like water and like, banana, and but everyone was so welcoming, and that's what is awesome. I don't know how many races that I've, we've worked hard, setting up or tearing down, but there's always some, you socialize and you have fun and you catch up with friends, and it doesn't seem like work when you're doing it. And I know for me, I wanted more of that. And sometimes people don't want to step up and help. They want to be asked. And I just was like, hey, put me to work.
Yeah.
And I mean, there are thousands, like if there's anyone else out there like me that, want to, totally be engulfed by the sport and love it, there's tons of things that we can do, and you can always socialize, and I will always have a cooler of refreshments for you.
That's right. That is a good thought. What would you say to like someone who's kind of on the outskirts of the sport, or maybe, isn't involved with Team Rocket and just isn't involved that much, but maybe just started doing like a sprint last year or something?
Mm-hmm.
What's good advice for somebody that's new to the sport, not just from volunteer, but just racing? Like what would you say to like new triathlete comes to you and says, what should I do? Like, how do I get engaged?
I really feel like finding your people, like finding a group to help support you. And I, for me, it was team TRTC. It was my friends, I raced with several people in Tennessee, and it's someone to share in that triathlon world, because, I did 4 races with my friend Amazon, and the best part of finishing an Ironman still to this day for me is sharing all the stories, all the war stories of, whether you had a flat or didn't, this racer did this, and oh my goodness, at mile 45, I did this. And it's, sharing those stories and kind of having that community is super important. So A, find your people, and then B, just stay at it, ask questions, be curious. Because if you just assume that, well, I can't finish with X distance because I just can't. If you have the will to train and believe in yourself, you can finish any distance. I mean, there are hundreds of thousands of athletes out there that have proven that. So
that's such a good word. I love that. I love it. Okay, so passion number 2 besides triathlon. Tell us why you love pencils, how you've gotten into being interested about pencils. I'm dying to know this. I'm like, dying. That's why I did not ask you this before this interview, because I was like, I just want to know straight up.
Okay. So back to the Space and Rocket Center days. I got to train the staff, the counselors that took the kids around to space camp. Okay. And there was this presentation. I did not write the presentation. I cannot take credit for the cleverness of the presentation, but it was called The Presentation Everyone Likes, LIKES. And it was basically the formula for a good presentation. L stands for launch. Then you get everyone involved. You have a great deal of knowledge. you show a great deal of enthusiasm, and then at the very end, you need to summarize your presentation. So it was really boring. I mean, like that part was cool, but it was really boring how they did it. So one day I was like looking at my pencils, and I was like, oh, I really like my pencils. Let me teach about the pencils. So I would do a presentation, LIKES, about the Dixon Ticonderoga, the world's number 1, number 2 pencil. The reason I love this pencil, going back to being a child, and my mom would, everyone would have really cool pencils with their names on it. And my mom, that wanted me to pronunciate correctly, gave me Dixon Ticonderogas. I didn't really love them until I taught school, and then it was something. So I loved them. They're the best. So I learned as much as I possibly could about how you make pencils, to make this presentation as cool as it could possibly be. And people would take notes, like, oh my goodness, this is important. I've got to know Joseph Dixon, that he started the company in 1890, blah, 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 blah. But the biggest thing was, a pencil is in, the late 1800s, like 1890. I think it was an article in 1895 that this was a piece of technology that would change communication. And that was baffling and bizarre. I worked at a place that taught kids about rockets and going to the moon, and a pencil, which is so trivial, was so important in the 1800s in how we communicated with each other. So it just really got me to thinking, and I dug even deeper into Dixon Ticonderoga. I visited the corporate headquarters, and the one thing about the founder of, or the creator of the pencils were invented in Europe, and then they came to the United States. But Joseph Dixon, where Dixon Ticonderogas he did a lot of different things, tons of different things. But he stopped doing, when he came up with these pencils, he said he wanted to stop doing all of the other stuff, because he wanted to make the best of its kind pencil. And so I also think of, the pencil as, I'm not going to be a professional triathlete, but I'm going to try to be the best of my kind. And pencils are kind of I have them everywhere. They're here at the store. They're kind of my reminder that we kind of have to stay sharp and keep doing what we're doing to improve upon ourselves, and kind of do our best. So it's kind of my motivational tool as well.
I love that. So it's like an emblem of something that you believe in. That's also this tangible thing that you can see in each day. That's pretty cool. So what's the deal with Ticonderoga? What does that even mean? Okay. Is that someone's name?
So Dixon is for Joseph Dixon. That's the company name. Ticonderoga, it was named after Fort Ticonderoga in the Revolutionary War. They wanted a great American name for a great American product. Up until about 12 years ago, they were all made here in the United States. There was one of the last pencil companies to be fully made here in the United States. There is a custom pencil company in Tennessee. I don't remember their name, but it was very, very Americana. The marketing company of the Ticonderoga, they used Norman Rockwell portraits, and it was very American. And interesting enough, the Dixon company was the first company to license Disney characters on their products. So they were on the cutting edge in the 1920s of, marketing. So they, their product had to be the best. And another interesting fact about the pencil, everyone thinks that the core is made out of, lead, but it's not. It's made out of graphite and clay. And the more graphite you have, the harder the pencil is. The more clay you have, the softer the pencil is. So the reason, number two, it's the right amount of darkness for like scantrons to read it. the right amount of hardness so that it will hold its point throughout a standardized test. So that's why you have to take your number 2 pencils. I don't know if they're even doing standardized testing like that anymore.
Back in the day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I graduated from college in last century, so it's
Me too. Yeah, and I at some point have been a pencil artist, so I have had a collection of the, all the way the different pencils of the different types that go from soft to harder, and that is true. The number 2 is just right. It's like there are some when you write with them, it just feels awful. The number 2 has this nice feel. So that's so interesting. Pencils. I love that. And I love that you, like you said, you use it kind of as a motivator and as an emblem of sort of like what you stand for, and it's something you can see in your everyday. So that's cool. And that makes me want to look around and be like, all right, what do I stand for? Am I chapstick? Am I reading glasses? What am I? I have this Dory on my desk. Is that my thing? That this is going to make me think harder about my little objects that I have sitting around that remind me who I am. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, that's really cool. Well, we better let you get back to the business of bikes. But I'm super thankful that I got to chat with you because, like, we probably never would have been able to sit down and have this conversation at a get together because we would have had all these other people interrupted and wanting to talk to you. So it's cool to get to know you better just over the little computer and get to interview you and hear about your life. So now I feel like warm fuzzies because I know Ruth Marie a lot better.
Well,
and
thank
I hope
you.
You guys do too.
Thank you so much. It's been great. It's been great. I don't like talking about myself, but it was fun. So
yeah, we'll make it easy for you.
Yeah, you did. You made it easy for me. So
when you're loved, it's easier to talk about yourself, and we certainly love it. So all right,
well,
cool. Have
thank
a
you so much.
fabulous day, and yeah, keep rocking it. Okay, bye.
Bye.